Now let's talk about collecting data to evaluate your program. The last video provided an overview of how to focus your evaluation design. Now we're ready to move on to talk about ways to gather credible evidence. Let's begin by testing how much you know about ways to collect data for an evaluation. True or false? There's one best way to collect data. False. Unfortunately, there's not one best way to collect data. It all depends upon what you want to know, who the respondents are, your resources, and what is culturally appropriate, among other things. Think about your choices and weigh the pros and cons of different ways to collect data. True or false? Quantitative methods that collect numbers provide more useful information. False. Sometimes numbers are more useful. Other times, narrative or qualitative data are more useful. Oftentimes, a mix of quantitative and qualitative data provides the most useful information. True or false? We often collect data from program participants. True. Yes, we often do collect data from program participants, but that doesn't mean they're the only ones or the best ones. There may be others, parents, volunteers, friends, who might be in a better position to provide the information we need. Or we might be able to use other existing information, documents, record books, journals, photographs, or other sources of information. True or false? We should always collect data from as many participants as possible. False. Sometimes using a sample provides better data. There is no one right method of collecting data. Each data collection method has a purpose, advantages, and challenges. The goal of data collection is to obtain trustworthy, authentic, and credible evidence. Consider what kind of data your stakeholders will find most credible and useful. When deciding how to collect data, consider what you need to know, whether it's numbers, stories, or a combination of both, as well as the intended methods of data analysis. Also consider where the data resides, whether it's files or with people, and the resources and time you have available to collect it. You also want to think about the respondents and the likely interruptions to the program or the participants that will be caused by the different research methods. The importance of ensuring cultural appropriateness, literacy levels of your participants, and how they can best be reached.
When doing research, there are lots of different methods you can use, but most of them fall into two main categories: quantitative and qualitative. Quantitative research often utilizes statistics and numerical data. It can also use scientific experiments, surveys, and structured observation. A quantitative study doesn't require personalized interpretation, so it should be replicable by anyone. Let's say you want to find out which leading brand of fertilizer works best on Venus flytraps. You would start with a hypothesis, for instance, that brand A is the best. You would test the different fertilizers on a large sample size of plants, carefully control for environmental conditions, and precisely measure all of the plants. If your conclusion is right, then other people should get the same result when they repeat the test. Qualitative research is more subjective and requires the researcher to interpret data in order to form thematic ideas. It often includes interviews with open-ended questions, case studies of specific situations, and loose observation. Let's say you want to find out if a youth program helps underprivileged teens. You would want to talk to the participants and ask them what they think. Then interpret your results. So to recap, quantitative research is objective, concrete, and measured, while qualitative research is subjective, interpretive, and descriptive. Not all research falls into one category or another. Your area of study may require a mixture of both. You should choose the method or combination of methods that works best for you.
The method of data collection can range from unobtrusive to obtrusive. Unobtrusive measures do not collect information directly from those you are evaluating, whereas obtrusive measures require you to collect information from those being evaluated. Let's see how much you know about the different ways you can collect data. So what is a case study? A case study is used to gain in-depth understanding of someone's experiences in a program. A survey is collecting standardized information from people in a non-threatening way. Observation. Gathering information by viewing what's occurring. How about a focus group? Exploring a topic in depth through group discussion. And last but not least, an interview. Talking with and listening to people either face-to-face or by telephone. A sample is a portion or subgroup of a larger group called a population. Sometimes we want to include everyone. Other times, it's better to collect information from a sample. The size of your sample depends on the size of the population, how varied the population is, how much sampling error can be tolerated, and your resources. You can use online sample size calculators to determine your sample size. Depending on your purpose, there are various sampling strategies. If you want to generalize from the sample to the population, probability sampling is necessary. Sometimes probability sampling is impossible, or you don't want to generalize to the larger group. Then non-probability sampling is appropriate. Some examples of probability samples include simple random samples, systematic samples, stratified samples, and cluster samples. Types of non-probability samples include quota samples, purposeful samples, convenient samples, and snowball samples. Does a sample always refer to people? Well, no. You might sample things like 4-H records, activity logs, gardens, demonstrations, clubs, and so forth. Once you have collected data for your evaluation, you can move on to the next step to analyze your data and report your results. We'll talk about those next steps in the following video.